In the quiet town of Akoto, nestled deep within the Ulands, Akoto sat before his loom, fingers moving swiftly as he wove thread after thread into vibrant patterns of Kent. His skill was unmatched, his cloths were sought after by kings, chiefs, and even foreign traders. Yet, on this particular evening, his heart was restless. Something felt different in the air. As the last golden thread slipped through his fingers, a faint shimmer caught his eye. Perched in the corner of his workshop was a spider unlike any he had ever seen. Its body glowed like molten gold, and its long legs wove a delicate pattern in midair, shimmering under the oil lamp's glow. Akoto leaned in, mesmerized. The pattern was unfamiliar, intricate yet deliberate, as though the spider was speaking in the language of the loom. That night, sleep did not come easily to Akoto. He tossed and turned, his mind filled with images of the golden spider and the strange pattern it had woven. Then, just as he drifted between wakefulness and sleep, a voice, soft yet firm, echoed in his ears. "Akoto, master of the loom, you have been chosen." Akoto's eyes snapped open, but he was not in his workshop. He stood in a vast golden web, suspended in the middle of a starry sky. At the heart of the web sat the golden spider, its many eyes gleaming like tiny suns. "The pattern I wove is a map," the spider continued. "It leads to a treasure hidden beneath the sacred hills of our ancestors. But be warned, others seek it too, and they will stop at nothing to claim it. You must act quickly." Akoto's heart pounded. He was just a weaver, a simple man. What did he know of treasure hunts or danger? But before he could speak, the spider vanished, and he woke with a jolt, the morning sun spilling through his window. The pattern was still in the corner of his workshop, gleaming faintly in the light. And so, the journey began. Akoto hurried to his workshop as soon as he awoke. The golden spider was gone, but the delicate web it had woven remained. He leaned in, tracing the intricate design with his calloused fingers. The more he stared, the more he was certain, it was not just a pattern, it was a map. The sacred hills. He knew of them. They stood beyond the village, shrouded in mist and ancient legends. The elders often spoke of spirits guarding their depths, warning children never to wander too close. But now, the spider had given him a secret, and secrets of this nature were not meant to be ignored. Akoto grabbed a fresh cloth and dipped his brush into a bowl of ink. Carefully, he began copying the spider's design onto fabric, ensuring he preserved every detail. If this truly led to a hidden treasure, he would need to decipher it before anyone else did. But deep in his bones, he sensed something: he was not the only one who had seen the web. That evening, Akoto wrapped his new cloth tightly and stepped outside, breathing in the crisp night air. The village was quiet, save for the distant sounds of drumming from the town square, where young men and women celebrated after a day's work. He debated telling someone, perhaps the village chief, or his childhood friend Kwame, but something held him back. Then, he felt it. A presence. The shadows near his workshop shifted ever so slightly, and the hair on the back of his neck rose. Someone was watching him. Pretending not to notice, he tightened his grip on the cloth and walked back inside, locking the door behind him. He placed the map under his sleeping mat and blew out the oil lamp. But as he lay down, he heard its soft footsteps fading into the night. He was being followed. And whoever it was, they knew about the treasure. The following morning, Akoto woke before the first rooster's crow. He lay still, listening. The village outside was peaceful, yet he could not shake the feeling that something had changed. The footsteps from the night before still echoed in his mind. As he stepped outside, the golden hues of dawn stretched across the sky. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. Then, a familiar voice called his name. "Akoto, my son," said Elder Kofi, one of the oldest men in Akoto. His wrinkled face bore the wisdom of many years, and his sharp eyes studied Akoto with quiet intensity. "I have heard whispers that something unusual has happened in your workshop." Akoto stiffened. "What do you mean, elder?" The old man stepped closer, his staff tapping against the earth. "There are things that should not be disturbed, my son. The sacred hills hold secrets older than our ancestors. If the spirits have sent you a message, you must tread carefully." Akoto swallowed hard. Had the elder somehow seen the web? Or had someone else already spoken to him? "You are a gifted weaver, Akoto," Elder Kofi continued. "But weaving patterns is one thing. Weaving fate is another." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Akoto with more questions than answers. After the elder's visit, Akoto returned to his workshop, locking the door behind him. He unrolled the cloth where he had copied the spider's pattern, studying it under the morning light. He traced the lines with his finger, following the curves and twists. Then he noticed something new. At the very center of the pattern, hidden among the golden threads, was a symbol. It was small, easily missed by an untrained eye, but Akoto had spent years perfecting his craft. He recognized it at once. It was the Adinkra symbol Ebon, the symbol of safety and security. It was often used to mark sacred places. A chill ran through him. The golden spider had not just left him a map. It had left him a warning. If he was to seek out this treasure, he would have to ensure it did not fall into the wrong hands. But first, he had to figure out who else was searching for it. And why. Akoto knew that if he wanted answers, he would have to listen carefully, to the wind, to the voices in the village, and to those who spoke in hushed tones when they thought no one was listening. The marketplace was alive with activity. Women balanced baskets of yams and plantains on their heads, traders called out their prices, and children weaved through the crowd, laughing as they played. But Akoto was not here to shop. He moved slowly, greeting familiar faces, his ears tuned for anything unusual. Near a stall selling dried fish, he overheard a conversation that made his breath catch. "They say the hills are not just hills," murmured one man, his voice low. "Something valuable is hidden beneath them. A treasure so great that even the spirits guard it." A second man scoffed. "If that were true, don't you think someone would have found it by now?" "Perhaps someone already has," the first man said. "Or perhaps the spirits have chosen someone worthy to reveal it." Akoto clenched his fist. Others were talking about the treasure. How had the secret spread so quickly? And more importantly, who else was listening? As Akoto turned to leave the market, he caught sight of something, or rather, someone, that made his skin prickle. A man stood near the edge of the market, watching the crowd with a quiet intensity. He was tall, with dark, piercing eyes and a scar that ran from his cheek to his chin. He did not look like a villager. His clothes were finely made but dusty from travel. And most unsettling of all, he was staring directly at Akoto. Their eyes met for only a moment before the man turned and disappeared into the crowd. Akoto's heart pounded. He had never seen the man before, but he knew one thing for certain: whoever he was here for the same reason Akoto was. And that meant the race for the treasure had truly begun. Akoto returned to his workshop, bolting the door behind him. He placed the cloth on his weaving table and traced the Adinkra symbol once more. His thoughts raced. The golden spider had chosen him. Why? He was just a weaver, a man who created beauty with thread, not a warrior or a treasure hunter. His fingers brushed against an old wooden box beside his loom. It had belonged to his grandfather, a master weaver before him. Inside were ancient weaving patterns, some passed down for generations. He flipped through them, searching for anything that resembled the web's design. Then, at the very bottom of the pile, he found it, a worn piece of parchment, its ink faded but still visible. It contained a fragment of the same pattern the golden spider had woven. Akoto's breath caught in his throat. His grandfather had known about this before him. This was not just a treasure hunt, this was part of his family's legacy. The sun had begun its slow descent when Akoto finally left his workshop. He needed to clear his head, and the best way to do that was to walk. He made his way toward the outskirts of the village, his feet carrying him instinctively toward the sacred hills. As he walked, he felt it again, the presence. Someone was following him. He turned sharply, but the path behind him was empty. Only the rustling of palm leaves in the evening breeze filled the air. He continued walking, his muscles tense. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw movement. A shadow slipped behind a tree. Akoto quickened his pace, his heart pounding. He was sure now, he was not alone. But if someone was following him, what did they want? Were they watching to learn what he knew? Or were they waiting for the right moment to strike? Whatever the answer, one thing was clear. The deeper he went into this mystery, the more dangerous it became. And the hunt for the treasure was far from secret anymore. The sacred hills loomed ahead, their peaks wrapped in mist like a shroud of mystery. Akoto paused at the base, staring up at the towering slopes. Legends whispered that spirits guarded these lands, punishing those who trespassed. But tonight, it was not spirits he feared, it was the men lurking in the shadows. He had no intention of going up just yet. He was here to observe, to see if anyone else dared to make a move. As he crouched behind a cluster of rocks, movement caught his eye. Two figures emerged from the trees, speaking in hushed voices. One was the scar-faced man from the market. The other was a villager Akoto recognized, Kojo, a man known for his greed. "This weaver knows something," Kojo muttered. "If we let him find it first, we may lose our chance." The scar-faced man nodded. "Then we make sure he doesn't get there before us." Akoto's grip tightened on the rock beneath him. They were planning something against him. He needed to act fast. Akoto slipped away before they could detect him. He took a longer path back to the village, careful not to be followed. When he reached his workshop, he unrolled the fabric again, focusing on the map. His grandfather's parchment had an extra detail, a marking near the base of the hills. Not on top. Beneath. Could it be a cave? His heart pounded. If the treasure wasn't buried in the hills but hidden inside them, that changed everything. It meant there was an entrance, a passage only a few might know about. And if Kojo and the scar-faced man were searching blindly, they would never find it. Akoto ran his fingers over the fabric, memorizing the pattern. The golden spider had given him the key. Now, he just needed to find the door before his enemies did. Akoto barely slept that night. Every creak of his workshop, every gust of wind outside his window, sent his heart racing. He knew the scar-faced man and Kojo would not wait long before making their move. Just before dawn, a faint rustling outside made him sit up. He grabbed a small dagger, one of the few things his grandfather had left him, and moved quietly to the window. A shadow darted past. Someone had been watching his house. Akoto's fingers tightened around the dagger. He wasn't safe here anymore. The moment the village stirred awake, he would need to leave, before his enemies decided to strike. Before he could act, a familiar voice whispered his name. "Akoto." He turned sharply. A figure stood near the doorway, barely visible in the dim light. It was Kwame, his childhood friend. "You're in danger," Kwame said, stepping closer. "Kojo has been asking about you. He wants to know what you've been working on." Akoto exhaled. He trusted Kwame, he always had. But how much could he reveal? "Kwame, I need your help," he admitted. "But I can't explain everything yet. Just trust me when I say that whatever Kojo is after, he cannot get his hands on it." Kwame nodded without hesitation. "Then we leave before sunrise." Akoto felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He would not face this alone. Together, they would find the hidden cave. And they would uncover the truth before it was too late. As the first light of dawn touched the village, Akoto and Kwame moved swiftly through the back paths, avoiding the main roads. They carried only what they needed: water, a small bag of provisions, and the cloth bearing the golden spider's map. The sacred hills were a half-day's walk from the village, but they needed to be cautious. Akoto had no doubt that Kojo and the scar-faced man would be watching the usual route. "We'll take the river path," Kwame suggested. "It's slower, but we won't be seen." Akoto nodded. Every step brought them closer to the truth, but also closer to danger. By midday, they reached a narrow stretch of forest bordering the sacred hills. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and distant rain. Birds chirped in the treetops, oblivious to the tension that gripped the two men. Then, Kwame suddenly held up a hand. "Wait!" Akoto froze. A few feet ahead, barely visible beneath the fallen leaves, was a thin rope stretched across the path. "A trap." "Kojo," Akoto whispered. Kwame nodded grimly. "They must be nearby." Carefully, they stepped around the trap and moved deeper into the forest. The message was clear: Kojo and his men were ahead of them. And they were willing to do whatever it took to stop Akoto from reaching the treasure first. But Akoto was no longer just a weaver. He was a man with a purpose. And he would not turn back now. Akoto and Kwame pressed on, moving carefully through the dense undergrowth. Every step was deliberate, every rustling leaf a potential warning. The trap they had narrowly avoided was proof enough: Kojo and the scar-faced man were ahead of them, waiting. They reached a clearing where the trees thinned, revealing the towering sacred hills in the distance. The sight sent a surge of determination through Akoto's veins. They were close. But then, Kwame whispered urgently, "Someone's watching us." Akoto's eyes darted to the treetops. A flicker of movement, a shadow shifting against the leaves. He couldn't see the face, but he knew they were not alone. "Keep walking," he muttered. "If we run, they'll know we've seen them." Kwame nodded, and they continued at a steady pace, all the while knowing that they were no longer just seekers of a secret. They were being hunted. As the sun began its descent, the map's markings led them to a steep rock face covered in thick vines. Akoto brushed the leaves aside and gasped. There it was, the hidden entrance. A narrow opening in the rock, barely visible unless one knew exactly where to look. "We found it," Kwame whispered in awe. Akoto's heart pounded. The golden spider had not lied. But there was no time to celebrate. If they had found it, it was only a matter of time before Kojo and the others did, too. They slipped inside, the cave's damp air wrapping around them. The light faded behind them, swallowed by the darkness of the unknown. Somewhere ahead, in the depths of the sacred hills, the treasure awaited. And so did whatever secrets had been buried with it. The cave swallowed them whole, its walls damp and cool against their skin. Akoto ran his fingers along the stone, feeling the rough texture beneath his calloused hands. The air smelled of earth and time, as if the place had been sealed away for centuries. Kwame lit a small oil lamp, casting flickering shadows along the narrow passage. If this place has been hidden for so long, why does it feel like someone has been here before? He murmured. Akoto felt the same unease. The tunnel stretched ahead, winding downward, as if leading them deeper into the earth's secrets. The golden spider's map had brought them here, but what else would they find? "We keep moving," Akoto said firmly. "We don't have much time." They moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the soft, damp ground. The deeper they went, the more the air changed, thicker, heavier, almost humming with an ancient presence. Then they heard it. A faint scuff of a shoe against stone. Akoto and Kwame exchanged glances, their breath hitching. Someone was behind them. They pressed themselves against the cave wall, extinguishing the lamp. In the darkness, their ears became their guide. The sound came again, closer this time. Kojo. Or the scar-faced man. They weren't alone in the cave. And whoever was following them knew exactly where they were going. The race for the treasure had truly begun. Akoto held his breath, pressing his back against the cold stone wall. The footsteps behind them grew louder, slow and deliberate. Whoever was following them wasn't in a rush. They knew Akoto and Kwame had nowhere to run. In the darkness, Kwame whispered, "We need to move before they corner us." Akoto nodded, relighting the oil lamp and pushing forward. The passageway tightened, forcing them to crouch as they advanced. The deeper they went, the more the walls seemed to change. Smooth patterns appeared in the rock, symbols carved by hands long forgotten. Then, suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. Kwame stumbled, barely catching himself. "What was that?" he gasped. Akoto glanced down. The stone floor had been carved in a circular pattern, different from the rest. It wasn't just a tunnel. It was a passage built to test intruders. A low rumble vibrated through the cave walls. Dust trickled from above as the air grew heavier. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them gave way. Akoto and Kwame fell, sliding down a steep tunnel of smooth rock. The lamp flickered wildly, casting brief flashes of light as they tumbled. With a sudden jolt, they landed hard on a flat surface. Akoto groaned, pushing himself up. Kwame coughed, shaking off the dust. They had fallen into a chamber, a vast space with towering walls lined with strange symbols. A single passageway stretched ahead. And in front of it, blocking their path, stood something that made their blood run cold. A skeleton, draped in the tattered remains of ancient robes, clutching a rusted sword. It was not alone. More bones littered the ground, broken weapons scattered among them. "This isn't just a cave," Kwame whispered. "It's a tomb." Akoto approached the skeleton carefully, his heart pounding. The figure seemed frozen in time, as if it had died protecting something. The golden spider's web had led them here, but why? Then, something glinted beneath the bones. Akoto knelt, brushing away the dust. His breath caught. It was another cloth, ancient, fragile, but intact. A Kent cloth unlike any he had ever seen, its patterns woven in gold and deep indigo. It bore the same symbol the spider had left him. Akoto carefully lifted the cloth. The moment his fingers touched it, a gust of wind swept through the chamber, carrying whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Only the worthy may pass." The word sent a chill through Akoto's spine. This was not just a tomb. It was a test. Kwame took a step back. "Akoto, I don't like this." Akoto didn't either, but there was no turning back. He unfolded the ancient Kent cloth, studying the patterns woven into it. Just like the golden spider's web, it held a hidden message. He traced the symbols with his fingers, speaking aloud as he deciphered them. "Step forward with truth. Speak with honor. Walk with purpose." As the last word left his lips, the chamber trembled. The skeleton before them collapsed into dust. And ahead, the passageway lit up with a golden glow, revealing a path deeper into the sacred hills. Kwame exhaled in disbelief. "You did it." But Akoto wasn't celebrating yet. Because if this was only the first trial, he could only imagine what awaited them next. Behind them, in the darkness of the passage they had fallen through, the sound of footsteps returned. Slow. Measured. Akoto's stomach twisted. He knew who it was. Kwame turned, gripping Akoto's arm. "We have to go. Now." Akoto didn't hesitate. Clutching the ancient cloth, he stepped onto the glowing path, feeling the warmth of unseen energy beneath his feet. Kwame followed, and together they hurried into the unknown. Behind them, the footsteps stopped. Then, a low chuckle echoed through the chamber. The scar-faced man had arrived. And he was right behind them. Akoto and Kwame moved as fast as they dared, their footsteps echoing through the narrow passage. The golden glow beneath them pulsed like a heartbeat, guiding them forward. Behind them, the scar-faced man's chuckle faded into silence. That was worse than hearing his footsteps. It meant he wasn't chasing them blindly. He was waiting. Calculating. Kwame glanced over his shoulder. Why isn't he following us? Akoto gritted his teeth. Because he knows something we don't. They had passed the first trial, but what if the scar-faced man already knew how to get through? What if he had been here before? A chilling thought struck Akoto. What if he had been waiting for someone else to open the way? The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its walls covered in polished black stone. Akoto stepped forward cautiously, his reflection shifting unnaturally in the glossy surfaces. Kwame followed, his eyes darting around. This doesn't feel right, Kwame muttered. Akoto nodded. The air here was thick, almost humming with energy. Then, as they reached the center of the room, the walls shifted. The reflections moved, but not in sync. Akoto's breath hitched as his own reflection stepped forward, even though he hadn't moved. Then it spoke. What is the measure of a man's worth? The voice was his own, yet it wasn't. Kwame's reflection turned its head, eyes glowing faintly. What must be sacrificed to gain wisdom? The room had come alive. And it was testing them once more. Akoto steadied his breathing. The first trial had been about walking with truth. This one was different, it demanded answers. He stepped closer to his own reflection. A man's worth is measured by his deeds, he answered firmly. The mirrored version of himself smiled slightly, then faded. Kwame hesitated before answering his own question. Wisdom is gained by sacrificing ignorance. His reflection, too, dissolved. The room trembled. The polished walls cracked, revealing another passage. The test had been passed. But before they could move, a new sound filled the chamber, slow, deliberate footsteps. Akoto turned. The scar-faced man had entered the hall. And he had come prepared. Unlike Akoto and Kwame, the scar-faced man did not hesitate. He walked into the room with confidence, his eyes scanning the mirrors. The reflections twisted unnaturally as they addressed him. What does a man fear the most? The scar-faced man chuckled. Losing control. His reflection smirked. Then the second question came. What must be given to take what is not yours? For the first time, the scar-faced man hesitated. Then, in a voice colder than the stone around them, he answered. Everything. The chamber shuddered. The walls groaned. Akoto grabbed Kwame's arm. Run! As they dashed through the newly opened passage, the sound of splintering glass filled the air. The hall was collapsing, but not because of them. The scar-faced man had answered correctly. And that meant he was coming after them. The passage led them to the edge of a vast underground chasm. A single stone bridge stretched across the darkness, its surface cracked and uneven. On the other side, a faint golden glow paused, another trial, or perhaps the treasure itself. Kwame took a step forward but froze as a loud crash echoed behind them. The scar-faced man was close. No time to think, Akoto said. We go now. They sprinted onto the bridge, their footsteps sending small pieces of stone tumbling into the abyss. Halfway across, Akoto felt it, the bridge was shifting. Behind them, the scar-faced man stepped onto the path, his movements slow and deliberate. Unlike them, he wasn't running. Because he knew something they didn't. The bridge wasn't collapsing. It was choosing. And not everyone would make it across. Akoto felt the bridge tremble beneath him. The shifting stones paused with an unseen force, reacting to their presence. Kwame's voice was tight with fear. Akoto, something is wrong. Akoto knew it too. The bridge wasn't just unstable, it was testing them, just like the previous trials. Behind them, the scar-faced man walked with eerie confidence, his steps slow and measured. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't rushing. And the bridge wasn't crumbling beneath him. It was only shifting under Akoto and Kwame's feet. He's passing the trial, Akoto realized. but it's rejecting us. The far side of the chasm was only a few strides away, but the path was falling apart beneath them. Kwame gritted his teeth. What do we do? Akoto's mind raced. The previous trials had tested truth and wisdom. What was this one testing? Then, it hit him. Faith. Jump, Akoto said. Kwame's eyes widened. What? The bridge is testing us. We have to trust that we make it. Behind them, the scar-faced man smirked. Or you could stay and let it decide for you. Akoto ignored him. He locked eyes with Kwame. Jump. Kwame hesitated, then, with a deep breath, he leaped. Akoto followed. For a split second, there was only silence. Then, warmth enveloped them. They landed on solid ground. The bridge crumbled away behind them. And the scar-faced man was still standing on the other side. Akoto and Kwame turned toward the golden glow. A massive stone door stood before them, covered in intricate carvings of weavers, hunters, and kings. This is it, Kwame breathed. Akoto touched the door. The moment his fingers met the stone, a deep, resonant voice filled the chamber. Who seeks the wisdom of the ancients? The glow intensified. A figure stepped forward from the light. A guardian. Draped in a flowing Kent robe, its face was hidden by a golden mask. It carried no weapon, yet its presence radiated power. Akoto swallowed hard. This was the final test. Behind them, the scar-faced man let out a frustrated growl. The bridge was gone. He could go no further. But Akoto had a feeling his greatest challenge was still ahead. The guardian was waiting. And it had questions that only he could answer. The guardian's presence filled the chamber, its golden mask reflecting the flickering glow of the carvings on the door. Akoto and Kwame stood frozen, their breath shallow. Then, the deep voice echoed again. What is more valuable than gold, yet weighs nothing? What builds kingdoms but cannot be held? Akoto's mind raced. Every test so far had required wisdom, truth, or courage. This was no different. Kwame whispered urgently, what do we say? Akoto's gaze flickered to the Kent patterns on the guardian's robe. Every thread, every symbol told a story, a legacy. And then, he knew. He straightened his back and spoke with certainty. Knowledge. Silence. Then, the carvings on the door glowed brighter. The guardian nodded. You may enter. With a deep rumble, the stone door began to slide open. Beyond the door lay a vast chamber, its walls lined with ancient scrolls, golden artifacts, and Kent cloths woven with shimmering threads. It was not just a treasure hoard. It was a vault of wisdom. Akoto's heart pounded as he stepped inside. This is the true treasure. Kwame's eyes widened as he ran his fingers over a golden loom, perfectly preserved. They weren't protecting gold. They were protecting history. In the center of the room, resting on a stone pedestal, was a single folded cloth. The patterns on it were unlike any Akoto had ever seen, woven in gold and deep indigo, just like the one he had found in the tomb. He reached out, his fingers trembling, and lifted it. The moment he did, a rush of warmth filled his body. His mind expanded, as if thousands of voices whispered their knowledge into his soul. The ancestors had passed their wisdom to him. And now, it was his responsibility to protect it. Before Akoto could fully process what was happening, a furious roar echoed through the chamber. They spun around. The scar-faced man stood just outside the vault, his face twisted with rage. He had found another way in. His blade gleamed in the dim light. Give me the cloth. Akoto clutched it tighter. This is not just a treasure. It's knowledge. It doesn't belong to one man. The scar-faced man sneered. Then I'll take it by force. He lunged. Akoto barely dodged, stumbling backward as the scar-faced man swung his blade. Kwame grabbed the heavy golden staff from the vault wall and blocked the next strike. "Go, Akoto!" Kwame shouted. "Get the cloth out of here." But Akoto couldn't leave his friend behind. Not now. The scar-faced man moved with ruthless precision, his blade slicing through the air. Kwame fought back with everything he had, but he was struggling. Akoto had no weapon, only the cloth in his hands. Then, the Guardian's voice echoed through his mind. "Knowledge is the greatest power." He looked down at the cloth. The patterns, they weren't just decorative. They were instructions. A technique lost to time. A way to fight without a weapon. Trusting in the knowledge passed to him, Akoto took a deep breath and moved. As the scar-faced man swung again, Akoto sidestepped with perfect timing. The blade missed by inches. He turned, using the movement to grab the man's wrist and twist, just as the ancient patterns described. With a grunt of pain, the scar-faced man lost his grip. The blade clattered to the floor. Kwame seized the moment, striking him hard with the staff. The impact sent the scar-faced man crashing against the vault wall. He slumped to the ground, unconscious. It was over. Akoto and Kwame stood in the vault, breathing heavily. The scar-faced man lay motionless, defeated not by brute force, but by knowledge. Kwame chuckled breathlessly. "You just took down the most feared man in the village, with a piece of cloth." Akoto smiled. "Not just a cloth. A legacy." They turned to the vault, knowing they couldn't take everything. But they could take the wisdom. Akoto carefully folded the sacred Kent cloth and placed it in his bag. Then, with one last look at the treasures of the past, they stepped out of the chamber. As they exited the sacred hills, the first rays of dawn kissed the horizon. The village lay ahead, unaware of the knowledge that had just been reclaimed. Akoto knew his journey was only beginning. He would not keep the treasure hidden. He would weave its wisdom into every cloth, every thread, and every lesson he passed on. Because true power was not in gold or stolen riches. It was in the stories we preserve, the knowledge we share, and the legacy we leave behind.